And my audio is coming through great. Okay, so we're going to cover a few different things today. One of them is going to be these enhancements to Asterix. So let's start talking about that. And I guess I'll use this board so that my audio actually comes through the laptop pretty well, in case people are rewatching this later. Oh man, this is one of those awful rotating boards that I hate writing on. Hey, by the way, did y'all hear about what happened with the Overwatch League recently? With the banning? Mac, do you know what this is about?
I've been hearing a little bits and pieces.
Okay, so the short version is some player that was a professional player of Overwatch made a homophobic remark, and the league was like, "You're banned for 4 games," and then his team was like, "No, you're banned for 9 games, out." And I thought that was really cool. So it's good to see that like competitive professional gaming is a little bit less childish and stupid than sometimes you find gaming to be online. So all right, so now that that has allowed me time to erase the board. All right, so what did we say that we wanted to add to Asterix? There was points and lives. These are the 2 things that we wanted to add. So where have we seen points before? Apple Picker, right. So man, I'm just going to go pull a bunch of that stuff from Apple Picker. Somebody actually asked me, is it cheating to pull from previous projects? Hell no, it's not cheating to pull from previous projects. Please, please, please pull from previous projects. So in Apple Picker, we saw all this stuff about how to create the UI and reference the UI and all that kind of stuff. So this is a great place to get this information. And we didn't require a high score, right? But you could have thought, oh man, yeah, maybe I'll do a high score, and that'll be an enhancement that I can do on top of what was asked for. So that's another way. However, this actually gets to something that there was a question asked on Piazza about this, and I just wanted to make sure everybody got the answer. We've mentioned this a couple of times, but just to reinforce it, every time you turn something in, especially something that has any of your enhancements in it, please write us a readme.txt file, and just in that text file say, hey, this is what I did, because that will help us know what to look for. Like, you could have done something really, really cool in the background, some really amazing coding that is not super obvious from the beginning, and we'd never know. I've had students that are like, yeah, my special thing that I did is I made 20 levels for this thing that we made. But, you know, when I'm going in and testing, I only play like the first couple of levels, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. So I might not know that you made 20 levels without, like, you telling me. So please, 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 when you turn something in, turn in a readme.txt file that tells us what we should be looking for that are things you think are cool that you did on top of the basic assignment. Or if, say, you weren't able to complete the basic assignment because something happened, put that in the README, you know? Hopefully you will have asked the question on Piazza, and hopefully your README doesn't say, well, I didn't really start this project until 4 hours before it was due, and then I ran into a bug, so I didn't, you know, like, I mean, you can write that to us. I don't know how sympathetic we'll be, but just like the README is your way of communicating to us. Some students try to put that information in the D2L submission, but it's really shockingly hard for us to see that. Generally, the way that we approach D2L grading is we go in and we find the Dropbox and then we just say download everything, and it pulls it all down and puts it in a folder for us. This is also why you need to name things carefully, because all the folders you submit get zipped up, and then like they get a name on the zip file, but when we unzip them, it's just whatever you named the folder. So if you just named it My Project 3, like that's what we're going to know. And we're like, well, we don't know who's supposed to get the grade for My Project 3. So that's why we're so much sticklers about you putting your name on your project folders and on your WebGL builds. But yeah, if you put that text in, then it basically gives us like an HTML file with like this really long numeric code and then your name hidden somewhere in there. And so it's hard to associate that with you. It's much easier if you put a readme.txt file either like right here, well, both right here at the top level of your project, just put a file in here called readme.txt. The other place that is really helpful for us to get it is when you do your WebGL build, which I'll show you in a second. Actually, I'll show you this right now because this is, I want to make sure that I get to this. So let's look at the WebGL build that I did for Asterix when I was building this, and I believe this is the one that is that has the wrong framing, and I'm going to go over that framing thing again. It's just that doing the WebGL build takes so long. So anyway, here's my no, or maybe this is this. No, this one you can see that like when they go off the top, they immediately jump to the bottom, but if they go off the side, they go way off before wrapping around because the default window is like 960 by 400 or something, and is not the same aspect ratio as our 16 by 9 that we're working at inside of Unity. Here, this is an HTML file, and HTML is super easy to deal with. Oh, hey, Tingle's Tights, look at that. Anyway, I was watching a thing on all the new items in Breath of the Wild. So HTML is really easy. Who's edited HTML before? Okay, well, everybody's going to learn it because it's mad easy. All right, so I just right-click on this, and I say Open In or Open With, and I just pick any text editor you've got. Like TextEdit is built into a Mac. Notepad is built into PC. I believe it'll open HTML files. Anything will open HTML files. Hey, look, it's Visual Studio, our new buddy. And so I open up Visual Studio, and it will open up HTML files. Now, Visual Studio is probably smart enough to know that it's an HTML file and actually, like, color the code. We'll see. Oh, man. Visual Studio Community? That's not what I expected.
That's what it's called.
Is it what it's called on Mac now? Oh, okay, okay. Sorry. Anyway, hey, look, it's HTML, and it's nicely colored for us. Well, that's cool. So let's take a look at this and see, like, what's going on here. And like almost nobody in the class said they've ever dealt with HTML before. Only a few people. Well, let's take a look at this and just sort of break it down. So we've got HTML. Okay, I get that. That probably means that there's some HTML stuff here. And then the key thing to know is in any kind of markup language that's based back in the day on, I think UML was the first one. A markup language means that you put these tags in, and the tags are in between angle brackets. And there are often opening tags and closing tags. So you'll see up top, there's this HTML, which is in between the angle brackets, and then at the bottom, there's a slash HTML, which means to close the HTML. So anything between line 2 and line 25 is part of the HTML. I do see that there's not a closing tag on doctype HTML at the top, which I'm a little bit surprised by, but it probably has to do, it's because it has the bang or the exclamation point at the beginning. In fact, like old CS people call it a bang. Because it has the bang at the beginning, it probably means it's a special thing that does not require a closing tag. But here you've got this head thing, and it talks about, like, okay, there's a script up there. This is actually some JavaScript stuff. There's like a title up there, and that's actually the title that appears at the top of the browser page when you open it on line 6 there. But the part we're concerned about is here in the body. And again, I know this looks like noise, but the great thing about this is you've got this WebGL content that is in this div, and that WebGL content, everything from line 16 to 23, is where your actual Unity game is. That's what the game container is. And then this script here on line 12, which goes off the line, is what actually loads up the game into this game container, which is 960 by 600. Now, one thing I can do, hey, Mac, would you do me a favor and figure out what the aspect ratio is to turn 960 by 600 into 16 by 9? So just divide 600 by 9 and multiply it by 16. Yeah?
This is the actual HTML file from your project?
Yeah, I did a web build. This is what I got. Yep. So yeah, just if somebody could just divide like 600 by 9 and multiply by 16, I would appreciate it. So, and this is the real HTML. Now there is.
That doesn't come out to
Doesn't matter. Give me something.
1066.66.
Great. It'll be close enough, right? So now I set this to 1066 by 600. I'm actually going to see whether setting it in the HTML fixes the problem or not. It might, and it might not. I don't know. But here's the important part. This is where you can write your README information. Yay, exclamation points. So after that div is just page. And you can write anything in here as long as it's inside the body tag. So this is where you can write about the things that you've done. And this is the best way to write a kind of README information to us, because what happens is I save this, and then if I open it up, by the way, if you're on Mac or PC or Linux actually, and you want to view your web builds in browser on your local machine, like if I try and open this in Chrome, Chrome's going to get real upset with me. See, it says here, this browser does not support running WebGL content from file URLs. Okay, so that's a security thing. Chrome thinks it's a big deal. Firefox still allows this. So if I open this in Firefox, then you'll see that it will run it. And hey, look at this. This is where you can write your README information, right up there at the top. Also, this is wider now, and oh, how did that happen? I guess I clicked and didn't realize it. But let's watch this one here go off to the right. There, so I fixed my aspect ratio problem. And I fixed it after building, so that means I don't have to go and wait another like 10 minutes for the build to happen. Which it should be faster on your machine. Because I'm running OBS at the same time, OBS takes a ton of processor power. If you go up here, you can see that OBS is taking up like 90% of the processors and a bunch of the graphics card. So anyway, yeah, there you go. So that's where you can write your information. And you can see, I talked about the title. That's up here. Because we now use tabbed browsers, it's a little bit harder to see. But the title is up here, and it does say Unity WebGL * Jeremy Bond there. But please do put your information there in the HTML. And again, for if you're watching this video later or whatever, like right here, you can write that information. And it doesn't really matter whether you put it above or below the div. It's always going to be in the top left of the page, because part of the cascading style sheets for the div cause it to be centered and placed where it is. You could probably like do this to put it up in the div, and then let's go single sites. All right, let's go refresh that page here. And yeah, now you can see that it's down here rather than up top. But again, if you want me to see it when I'm grading, like it's probably a really good idea to put it, like you can put it right after the body tag or right before the closed body tag. And then we'll put it first thing on the page that we will see when we open the page. If you write like an entire novel, oops. So I'm going to put a break here at the end, which is a, oh, that's weird. It's a tag that actually does not require a closing matching thing. But let's, why are you ignoring this return? Okay, so there's a lot of this now. And now if I go back, I keep closing the page because I keep thinking, hey, I'm done with this. I'm going to go back to Unity. Now you can see, don't write too much in the body tag. But, I mean, Mac and I are pretty smart. If you do this, then we can just, like, highlight this text and copy it and paste it somewhere else, and we can actually read it. So don't worry too much about that. But if, on the other hand, you take all of this and you do put it inside the div tag, then it will show up. Refresh. Oh man, come on. There. Oh, but it pushes stuff off the top. Okay, so yeah, just here's why this is happening. Because I see your quizzical look. So the div says what's the height of the page, center myself on the page, and because the div now contains this text, it is centered on the page, which forces it off the top and bottom. So if I, oops, if I zoom out my, oh, come on. It's trapping my key input. Fine, whatever. Don't do that then. That was a bad idea. So just go ahead and put it back where I said before. Yeah, put it right after the opening body tag. It's fine. If you write us an essay, we can copy and paste it into a text editor, and we'll be just fine. Any questions about this? Say again? That's true. I could put it in a p tag and see if that worked. I'm just, as long as the information is there, that's the thing that I really need. So there's kind of another way to do like layout, which is putting it in a paragraph tag like this. And I don't know, maybe that'll work. I don't know if it'll be any different or not. Yeah, so it's still behind it. That's fine. I'm totally fine with that. Because again, like I just need it to be there so I can see it, so that I know what to look for. Because again, if you're like, oh, I completely rewrote the random spawning of asteroids or something, like how am I going to know that if you don't tell me? Right? Okay, great. So getting back to what I was initially going to talk about, we've got this points that we've done from the apple picker, and we've kind of got lives from the apple picker. What's equivalent to the lives in the apple picker? Exactly. So we've kind of got an example for how to do it from apple picker as well. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with these. I know, like, I promise you, I get several private messages on Piazza every week. They're like, I don't really know what's going on. I really feel like everybody else knows what's going on, but I don't know what's going on. It's okay. Nobody knows what's going on. It's fine. I don't know. Maybe a couple of people know what's going on. But it's like that's the point of this class, is nobody knows what's going on. And that's why you're taking this class, is so we can help you go from that to knowing what's going on. If I were to graph, like, thinking you know what's going on over time. So let's say this is the beginning of the semester, and this is your final project, and here's your classic game, and here are, like, and we're like right here right now, right? So each, and I'm sorry about the thing in the way, but like your individual, I think I know what's going on, is probably gonna go about like this, and then right here you're gonna have a crisis, right at the beginning of the classic game project, and you're like, how am I gonna make a game? I don't know what's going on. But as you work on this project, and I've seen this, again, I've been teaching this kind of class since 2000, like as you work on this, you're like, what? I do know what's going on. And so that's generally how people do. Like generally there's this big crisis right before the classic game project where everybody feels like they have no idea what to do. And then working on this project, you're like, oh, wait. I did score thing in apple picker. And oh, hey, I did that thing that forced the ship to stay on the screen from the Space Shmup project. And oh, yeah, that's right. I worked with multiple levels in the Mission Demolition project. And you just start realizing you know a lot more than you thought you did. And so don't worry about being here, and don't worry about your crisis of faith here. It's okay. Like, it's going to be okay. As long as you put in the time and you put in the work, it's going to be okay. And then the other big message is, like, everybody feels confused and scared. It's okay. So it's going to be all right. All right. So that being said, let's go ahead and add these things. And I am not going to go back and just copy the code from Apple Picker, which, you know, if I were a student, is exactly what I would do. I'm just going to kind of do it from scratch here, in the hopes that this might be showing you a different way of doing it. And it turns out, as many times as I've taught this, I probably will do it the exact same way, just by accident. But this is just to sort of show you a way of dealing with it. So I've got this, and I want to have a score. And I want to figure out, how, like, just simple score. I want to give the player 100 points every time they shoot an asteroid, and then give them 3 total lives. So let's do that. The first thing I'm going to do is the score thing. So I'm going to go under Create, and I'm going to add under UI text. Now, one thing I will say, when you're working on your final projects, just so you know about it, there's this amazing thing called Text Mesh Pro that is in the Unity Asset Store that is now free. That used to be like 60 or 90 bucks, and everybody I know bought it. Every indie developer I know bought it because Text Mesh Pro is really rad. It's faster than regular text. It is prettier than regular text. It allows you to do cool things like have white text with a black outline, so it really pops on a background. It's called Text Mesh Pro, all one word, and it's free to download and easy to use. So I'll show you some of that later, but just be aware of it. So here, let's look at what's going on here. So first, I added a text, but it also added a canvas. You saw this on Apple Picker, and then right here, there's something going on, tiny, tiny, tiny down there. And what that is that this is now, and I don't know why it's like way off center, but this is now your frame for the actual GUI, whereas your frame for the game is really tiny and down here. The reason that is, and I don't know why they chose to do this, but in Unity, as you know, one Unity unit is 1 meter, right? So that's about this much, you know? Like, I don't know, those of you who don't come from the United States probably have a better idea of what a meter is than I do, but it's about that much, right? For some reason, they were like, you know what else 1 Unity meter will be? 1 pixel, which is about that much. I don't know why this much and that much are equivalent, but that's what they decided to do, and they kind of overlay them on top of each other here. And I mean, probably it gets less in the way when it's overlaid like this, but I really do wish that what they had done is maybe just do the simple camera calculations to frame it within the camera. That would have been cool. And there's probably some sort of asset you can download that would do that. But that aside, we've got our canvas here, and it is the same shape and size as our screen. So if I change this, come on, you can, there we go. From 1080p to like 800 by 600, you'll see that it changes to 800 by 600 instead of 1920 by 1080. And that is not undoable. That's interesting. Undo did something else. So here, we're back to 1920 by 1080. And I've got this thing called text. And I'm just going to call it score. And in Apple Picture, I called it GT for GUI text. I could just call it score text. I could call it whatever, but I'll just call it score GT because that's what we called it before. This rect transform thing is all sorts of confusing. But one thing that's nice about it is you click here, and if you hold down, and this gives you all these different ways that it can be anchored, right? So this one in the middle is relative to the center. And this is relative to the right side, and relative to the left side, and relative to the top left corner. This one is actually relative to the overall volume. So it's like what percentage from 0 to 1 does it take up? And I use that for layout on things like mobile games, where the size of the screen is going to change drastically for the mobile game. But right now, we just kind of want this to be anchored in the top left. And if I hold down Option, you can see how it sort of changes the icons. Option means it will move it there rather than just anchoring it there. So now if I hold down Option and you watch this little guy here, when I click top left, it jumps up to the top left, which is nice because now I can say, and I'm going to increase the font size so you can actually see what's going on to like, say 48. Okay, so what happened? I'm going to zoom in. So font size is 48, but now it's disappeared. Any ideas on why it disappeared? Sure, yeah. That's not quite it. Yeah, Mackenzie? Did you ever hear that? Like, so wrap means when it gets too wide, it wraps around. And truncate means if it's too tall, it chops it off. And so, as she said, it gets chopped off, and it's just gone. Like, so what I need to do is just kind of grab this and say, oh, hey, look, there it is. And you're right, it's really hard to see on the monitor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the color. Hey, by the way, if you're on Mac, I reported a bug to Unity yesterday that I want to show you. If you don't have the OS X color picker, and you use the Unity one, and you're like, oh, I want to use the eyedropper. It does this, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, where it's like, oh yeah, you totally want the color of the mouse pointer. So there are 3 colors you can pick with this eyedropper. There's black and gray and white, which is not very helpful. But if you turn on the OS X color picker, which is actually also a bug because they changed the name to Mac OS and I had to change it throughout the book. But if you change that, now the color picker works. You click the little eyedropper here, and lo and behold, it actually works the way it's supposed to. So just so you know, that's a thing to watch out for and a way to fix it on the Mac side, or avoid it. It's not really fixed. But so now it says new text there. Okay, that's kind of cool. I can sort of see what's going on. Let's make it a little bit bigger. We'll make it 64. And again, I need to make it bigger here. So again, up here, I can just say, oh, you know what? Let's make it 256 by, I don't know, 128. That makes it really tall. Yes?
Is there a reason not to just turn off that? If you just turn those to something else, would that not work, or is that still
I could totally turn those off. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little bit obsessive compulsive with my coding stuff, and so that feels messy to me. But I'm not going to care when I'm grading you. It's totally fine. Yeah. So let's try that. Let's just see if that does what we need. So I'm just going to go here and say, hey, overflow, and then it's happy and it's fine. So yeah, that's totally fine. That's absolutely a valid way to do it. So now I'm going to say, well, I want it to be indented, and this is one of the nice things about this. Okay, so why do I have such weird numbers here? I can see it's in the top left corner, but I've got this 133.81 and this negative 33.25. What's going on with that? Any thoughts on what that might be? Yeah. So that's almost what it is. Matt, do you know what I'm getting at here? Yeah, just tell us.
It's positioning relative.
Right, so this pivot thing, which here is where on the object does it think 0, 0 is on the object. So it's really close to what you were saying, and very much along the same lines. If I change this pivot to 0, 0, then it's like, oh, okay, so that's the bottom left of this. If I change it to 0, 1, then it's the top left of it. And this whole thing where it's not here, this is just, it hasn't updated the screen yet. It's not actually going to stay there, I don't think. Let me hit tab. Yeah, there you go. So that's almost exactly what's going on there. So when I set this to 0, 1, it says, in X, left hand is 0, right hand is 1. In Y, bottom is 0, top is 1. So 0, 1 says this top left corner, that's 0, 0 in this object. Now you'll notice that actually moved the object. If I undo that and I go back and turn this guy off, this raw edit mode, then when I change these, it will keep it in the same position but move the anchor. I have generally found that I get less enraged when I have raw edit mode turned on. But that is just play with it and see. It is. I've done a lot of UI stuff in Unity, and it gets really complex when you start embedding things inside other things and allowing Unity to control the stacking of objects and all this kind of stuff. But just play around with it, and you should eventually find something that you're happy with. Down here is the text field. I can just say 1,000,000, right? And that's great. And then I can make it. I can give it enough room if I want to. But this, and then I can say, oh, the font style is bold now. So there you go. That's generally how I would set up a score text. Another thing to consider is, do you want it to be left aligned or right aligned, right? Because if it's left aligned, then as your score grows, it's going to push out to the right. If you right align it, then as the score grows, the 0 is going to be anchored here, and it's going to push to the left, which is more what we as people are used to. So anyway, that's another consideration to have. This all looks fine to me. Oh, there is this best fit thing, which adjusts. Okay, apparently doesn't work if
overflow is turned on. That's interesting. But what best fit is supposed to do is if I have wrap turned on and truncate turned on, it should shrink the font size to fit, to be less than or equal to the font size that I set here. So if I set this to 640, then you'll see that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger up to 640.
So actually this one, it automatically grabs it from your font size, but it's based on the main size font size down there.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. Yes. So best fit enables these and gives you a minimum and maximum size of the font. That's absolutely right. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to set this back to 64. I'm going to turn off best fit. One of the main reasons that I habitually turn off best fit is because, again, working in mobile, when you have best fit turned on, it recalculates that all the time, which is problematic and can slow down your thing. We're not supposed to worry about speed in this class, but remind me to say that in 333. Okay, cool. Great. So there we go. We've got a thing. It's got a name, Score GT. It's got a score up here. And now I need for when a bullet hits an asteroid, for the asteroid to tell the score to increase. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, sorry, is selecting this again, just to show you if I set, position X to 10 and position Y to -10, you'll see that it gives us some nice spacing there out from the top left. And all I have to do is hit Option and go to top right, and now it jumps to the top right. And again, here I'd say, oh, well, my pivot should probably be 1, 1. Let me go zoom in on it. By the way, if it's selected here and hit F, nope. Whatever. There. You select it here, you move your mouse over here, then you hit F, it'll focus on it. And here, right now, you can see that the slightly bigger circle is here, which is our anchor. So if I set the pivot, I keep saying anchor and pivot. If you set the pivot to 1, 1, it'll put it in the top right. And then you can say, okay, -10, -10. And that gives us some nice spacing. You could even say, if you really felt like being nerdy, -9, -16 and -9. And then it's the same percentage away from the right side as it is from the top, which might look good. I don't know. I'm not an artist. Some of you are artists. You can, whatever. Okay, great. So now we've got this. So where should we put the code to adjust the score? So there are two things that know when an asteroid gets hit by a bullet. What are the two things that know when an asteroid's been hit by a bullet? Come on, Mackenzie answered the last one. Somebody else. You answered the one before that. Somebody else. All right, yes. The bullet and the asteroid. They both know that the bullet hit the asteroid, right? So we could put it on one of those two. Now, I am going to choose to put it on the asteroid because the asteroid has another piece of information, which is how large the asteroid is. It's got that size information. And if I wanted to eventually give people more points for hitting a small asteroid, then the asteroid would be aware of that and know it. And that's generally how I kind of decide where to put code, is to think about who knows what's going on and who has the most information that will be most salient or useful about what's going on. So it's time to open up some code. And again, on a Mac, this is a little bit weird, but every time you launch a different Unity project or open something from the desktop, it opens a separate instance of Visual Studio. This, I think, happens on PC as well. I'm very against this, but there's nothing I can do about it. So, yeah. All right, here we go. So here's my asteroid, and here's my on-collision enter when the bullet hits it. So what are some things I need to know to be able to do what I want? So one is I need to know how much score. Like, how much do I want to increase the score? And I need to know, like, I need a reference to score GT. Because I need to know what to do with, like, how to get to that score GT. So you could, okay, so other one's bullet and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. So then here, you could say, add some scoring here. Okay, I'm going to do a text. And I'm like, wait, it doesn't know what text is. Why doesn't it know what text is? Okay, so I'm going to right-click on this. Oh, I keep right-clicking because you could right-click in MonoDevelop. I'm going to highlight it, go under Help, and go to API, Unity API reference. Yep, it's exactly right. It's exactly right. So here, text, right here, it's a class in Unity Engine.ui. It's very small on screen, but this is what I was looking for. Anytime you're looking something up, it should tell you what library it's part of. And so this tells us we need to use Unity Engine.ui to make text work. And again, I know that I talked about that in Apple Picker, and I was happy to see a bunch of hands go up. So that's just to keep in mind, if it's not showing up, it might mean that you need to add something up here. There is, by the way, a way to do this that's called like a fully qualified way, where you can say unityengine.ui.text, and you'll see that now it's blue and happy. But you don't want to type all this every time. So the using says, I don't have to type this. Just anything part of unityengine.ui it knows about. Okay, cool. That's interesting. I think here, was it gray before? No, I think it turned gray because it's like, dude, you don't need to type that every time. Cool. All right, that's good to know. All right, so text score GT equals game object dot find score GT. Why is that red? Oh, okay. This is because cannot implicitly convert type UnityEngine.GameObject to UnityEngine.UI.text. Of course it can't. So .get component text. Hey, it's happy with that. Why am I not happy with that? Why am I, as a developer, not happy with this line? There are a couple of different reasons here. Any thoughts on that? So what would happen if there was nothing called scoreGT? What would GameObject.find return if nothing was called scoreGT? Yeah, it would return null. And it wouldn't be a null reference error yet, but it would return null because that's how it tells you, hey, there's nothing out there named that. But then what you're doing is if this returns null, let's go ahead and copy this line here. If that returns null, then effectively we're saying null dot get component text, which is a null reference error because you're trying to ask null to do something, and null is nothing. It's emptiness, right? There's some value there, but the value is telling it there's nothing here. It's like the number 0. And in fact, it's worse than the number 0 because the number 0 actually has value. It is nothingness. So we're trying to get the component of the nothingness, which is bad. So that's one problem I have with this, is if I didn't name something scoreGT, it would give me a red null reference exception error when I tried to run this. The other thing, which is a little bit more subtle, is it just turns out that GameObject.find with like a string name is really slow. And I mean by really slow, it takes less than a microsecond, but it's enough. It's enough to just make my skin crawl as someone who's trying to write fast games. And again, this class is not about writing things fast, but there are ways to do this better that take advantage of several different things in coding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to put it up here in Start. And in fact, I mean, there's so many different ways I could do this, but let's do it here, but make it better here. So, well, what if instead of just having a local scoreGT variable, I had a property that stored this, kind of like with the rigid body things, where we say rigid, as a property of our class up here, like this one, rigid body rigid. Great. And what if instead of just that, I created a static text? There's argument about what to do this, how to do this, but I'm just going to do score GT like that, all caps. Sometimes this is called shouting caps. I refer to it as snake case. It depends on whether you hate it or like it. So I don't think it's that bad, so I call it snake case because there's these little snakes in between the things. So I've got a static text, and what static does is it means it's the same for every instance. So every asteroid is going to share the same value for score GT, which means down here in my code here, I can say if score GT is equal to null, then we can do this game object at find thing. So I can do game object go equals game object.find score GT, and then I can say, come on, you're smarter than that. All right. If go is not equal to null, then go.getComponentText is going to go into score GT is going to equal go.getComponent.text. And what if I can't? What if score GT is null? What if we can't find it? Well, you know what? If we can't find it, we should tell ourselves. So I'm going to say else debug.log error, which is like stronger than just debug.log, and I'm going to say could. First of all, I'm going to say where. I'm going to say, okay, this is asteroid colon on collision enter dash could not find a game object named score GT. 3 exclamation points. 4 exclamation points. All right, it's important. There we go. And then I need to close my brace here. So what this will do is, if score GT is null, then it'll try and go find it. And if it can't find it, it'll log an error. And this will actually show up in the console as a red error rather than the normal gray-like messages that we send to ourselves. And so now it will do that. And really here, I should also probably return because I don't want to try to use score GT later if it's not going to be defined. Does that make sense? I got a couple of nods? Okay. If you got questions, just ask me questions. All right. So then now here I'm going to say, great. Now that I have score GT and I've got a reference to it, I can add the score. And I'm going to do it the same way that we did it in Apple Picker, which is not the best way to do it, but it's going to be fine. Because other ways would be more complexity to get into today, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to say, okay, great. So int score equals score GT dot text dot to string, which is going to give me the string, but I need to turn that into an integer. So I'm going to say int.parse, and this is going to parse that into an integer. So it pulls the string out of the text. Oh, I guess this is redundant. That's why it's gray, because the text is a string already. You can see here it's already a string. So string.toString does give you a string back, but it's kind of redundant. It's nice. I like the Visual Studio's got this subtle, like, if this is gray, you're doing something you don't really need to do. Yeah, I kind of dig that. All right, cool. So now I've got score. I'm going to say, why does it keep doing this? So you'll see that it keeps trying to indent more, which usually means I've got a problem with my code. Okay, no, it's just confused. So if it's doing that, if like every time you go to a new line, it's tabbed in one, usually that means you're missing one of these braces, right? So if I hit return, I'm like, okay, something's missing. And then I select this, and I can see, okay, that's that one. So where does this one match to? Oh, it's this down here. That tells me that I'm missing a brace here. But if you've got this thing where it's tabbed in for some reason, just go to the previous line, hit return, and if it gives you the proper alignment here, then you're fine. Then you don't need to worry about it. Sometimes these editors get a little confused. Its code is very difficult to read, as you know, and so sometimes the editor gets a little confused. So then I'm going to say score plus equals Oh no, I didn't set the score. So I got to come up with a score. Well, let's use a static variable for that too. We'll do static int score increase equals 100. Great. So now I'm going to do score plus equals score increase. And then I have to put this back into my score GT. Score. If I just type SG, it's going to give me score GT. That's way better than trying to all caps type it. Score GT dot text is equal to score dot toString, which takes the integer score, turns it into a string. Now, here is something that we didn't talk about on. I don't think on. Did Apple Picker use the cool thing where it can add commas automatically to an integer? Okay, this is always hard to find. Every time I search for this, it takes way longer than it should to search for it, but it's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to go C#, toString, formatting, commas. Okay, here we go. What? What do they even do? I held an Option and I scrolled up, and it like went here. Maybe? Yeah, it went back when I. Anyway, I was trying to zoom in. I just hit the wrong key. C#.NET string format to add commas and thousands. That sounds a lot like what I'm talking about. And here we are on my old friend Stack Overflow. If you don't know Stack Overflow, you need to know Stack Overflow. Mac, how much do you love Stack Overflow?
Sorry.
It's really? Where else do you go? Okay. I mean, so Stack Overflow is this community of developers, and it's thousands or maybe even millions of developers asking questions and giving answers. And your experience points or reputation are based on how many people like your answer. So it's very useful. So here, this string.format is, it's not the way that I would do it. But hey, look, this person's like, I found this to be the simplest way. My integer.toString, quote, in 0. And what this means is in, put commas in between numbers in the thousands places. And the 0 means 0 decimal points, which you don't really need for, I don't know why you do that. But whatever, it's in. So I like this person's answer. So I'm going to pop that up. Oh, whatever, fine, all right. So anyway, I'm going to say, oh, toString, quote, in. Oh, okay, now I love Visual Studio because it did this thing. This is amazing. All right, this is like one of the toughest things to find documentation on. And look, it's just like, what do you want the number to look like? You just tell me, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what do I want the number to look like? Okay, got an in here, got an in with a 1, and that means there's zero things after the decimal point. Obviously, integers don't have decimal points. I'm just going to put an in. And it's like, okay, well, I'll put a 0. And then there you go. Man, that's really cool. Because you can do hexadecimal output. Can you do binary output? Ooh. Sorry. Nope. Okay, so I still have to write that. But anyway, there you go, in 0. And what this will do is now, if the score is above 999, it will put a comma for the thousands or the millions, which is really cool, because doing that manually is kind of a pain. Okay, so there you go. All right, so now I've got a score that should work. I never make guarantees in this class. Except that you'll feel like that at the beginning of the Classic Game Project. I guarantee that. All right. So now, oh, it's a million. And, okay, I did something wrong. Format exception. Input string was not in the correct format. Okay. So that was, and you'll see down here, that is 52. So, okay, 52 here. So scoreGT.text was not in the right format. Oh my God. It's possible that the commas are the problem here. Let's try this. So here. By By the way, the reason I don't rehearse these is because I think it's useful for you to see me make mistakes. Let's try this. Really? I can't even hit a thing? Oh, hey, look at that. It works. And oh, it doesn't work. Okay. So it doesn't work. Well, darn. Well, what can we do about this? One thing we can do about this is we can get rid of those commas. So I'm going to say, okay, string s equals score gt dot text. So I get that text in. And I'm going to say text dot replace. Hey, look, replace old char with new char. Oh, come on. Like, there's got to be a string version of that, right? Yeah, old string with new string. The reason I need a string version of that is because there's no such thing as an empty character. Like, there is no empty character. It thinks space was good enough. All right, I'm going to replace, in quotes, a comma with just two quotes. So that's going to give me an empty space there. And then I'm going to say, oh, yeah, now do s. And let's see if this works. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit play. And look at that. Hey, oh, and it hit me, so I died. But there you go. Now it's working. And the commas are working fine. And obviously, my starting score should probably not be 1,000,000. But you can see that having the 1,000,000 there gave us the opportunity to check that and find that error, when otherwise it would have had to have hit 10 before I encountered that error. Why did I put 1? 0. There you go, 0. All right, so now we've got a score. Any questions about the score thing? Sure, yes. That's actually a really interesting question. So the question was, would there be any problem with like creating a new script called score and just attaching that to things so that when they hit things, that score script would also get an on-collision enter and then would handle the on-collision enter in that way, right? That would not be a problem. That would be completely fine. I put it into Asteroid because it allows me to do this. So here, what's the best way to do this? This is going to be a little bit lame, but I shouldn't use that word. I'm sorry. Call me out on it if you hear me say it. Did I talk about that in this class? Okay, thanks. I'm sorry. This is not going to be the best way to do this. But, no, it is. I'm going to do this great. Okay, so I'm going to create another. So instead of a static int score increase, I'm going to say this is a static int array, because we talked about arrays last time. Score increase. I'm going to say equals 100. Actually, the size goes down, right? Yeah, so 0, 100, 200, 300. So what this is going to do is it's going to create an array where the third element is 300, and the second element is 200, and the first element is 100, and the 0th element is 0. And because my size here is 3, I go and I say, oh, okay. So instead, I'm going to say score increase bracket size, and this will give me for a size of 3, 300, and for a size of 2, 200. And that's backwards. Darn it. All right, so we'll do 4, 2, 1. That's better. So now for a size of 3, a big one, it's going to be 100. For a size of 2, it's going to be 200. And for a size of 1, it's going to be 400. And I don't have a size of 0 because there are none that are size 0. Great. So now that I have that, my score is going to increase based on the size. And that's why I put it here in the Asteroid. Normally, I would be all about what your suggestion is of like have a separate script to manage this. There are many ways in which that would be better. But because I wanted to take advantage of the size of the Asteroid, I just went ahead and put it in the Asteroid. I think, even then, I would probably, if I were on a bigger project, put it in a separate script. I think that's a really good idea. Because then you could do things like, say, this gets way complex, but you could create this thing called an interface, which allows multiple different classes to kind of pretend they're all the same thing. And if what that interface had was a score increase, then whenever a bullet ran into anything, you could say, hey, do you have one of those score increase interface classes on you? And it would be like, sure, here it is. And you say, well, what should I increase the score to be? And it would give you back that information. And that would be a really cool way to do it in a component-based way, but we'll talk about that like at the end of the class, probably, like the end of the semester. Cool. And did you have a question as well? Okay. That's a good question. I hate having literals in my code. And a literal is anything that's orange. And for things like this, not a big deal. But if it's things like points, and later I'm like, man, you know what? It is stupid to give people 100 points for doing one thing. Maybe it should be 1. I think it is easier to look at the top and have all those kinds of things up at the top of the code than dig through the code to try and find it. And if I was a new person who had never looked at this code before, and I just hit Shift-Command-F to find in files, and I put score, and I hit find, then I'm going to find down here, oh, score increase, great, as opposed to like 100, which could be anything, right? So those are kind of 2 reasons for that. In general, for anything where I'm not absolutely sure that that's the value I want, I'll give it a name. And even then, like I did it as an integer because I wanted to show that, and I didn't want to talk about constants, but there's a thing called a constant, which actually replaces, when it's compiling the code, it replaces the constant name with the actual value. So it's a little bit faster. But the other thing that could happen here is if score increase is static, then I could implement something later where when you pick up the star, you get double score for a certain amount of time. And then it could, that kind of thing. It just makes it a little bit easier to deal with. So, and I could do that without it being a non-literal, without it being a field like this, but I like fields. So, but that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Okay, cool. And hey, this works. I guess we haven't seen it. I like to say if everything works the way I think it will, because, bugs. But, all right, so now, hey, 100. 300. Oh, and I missed. Oh, and it killed me. Okay. There you go. Well, oh, come on. Wow. Like the last time I was like, oh, this would be funny if I do this. And that. Hey, look at that. All right. So 1 plus 2 plus 4 is 7. All right. Great. So anyway, now I've implemented this. I'm going to do the lives as quickly as possible, I think, because I'm a little bit worried about time here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take, should I do that? No. I'm going to just put a lives number up in the top left, right, because that's the easiest way to do this. I'm just going to duplicate my score GT here. I'm going to name this lives GT, and I'm going to hold Option and click there, and that's going to put it in the top left. I'm going to double click to select it. I'm going to set my pivot to 0 in the X, which puts it there. And then I'm going to set this to 10. What did I do before? To 16 and 9, -9. And then I'm going to left align it. And I'm just going to put lives 3. Right. So this just gives me, boom, I got lives there. And I'm actually going to do it the same way. Just to show you that you can sort of pull and push these kind of values by using that replace function we looked at. So player ship, there it is. Does that handle the reset of the game? Yes. So player ship actually handles the scene manager. Like a way to do this would be to have a static int. I'm going to make this a public int. lives instead of equal to 3, which is my starting lives. And then down here, I'm going to say if A is not equal to null, which is how we know that we hit an asteroid, I'm going to change this around a little bit because I want to add more code here, and it seems weird to have it inside these braces. So instead, I'm just going to say if A is equal to null, then return, which will exit me from this code. So now, if I did not hit an asteroid, if something else hit me, then just get out of here. We don't need to be here. Then I'm going to say here, lives minus minus, which will take lives from 3 and set it down to 2. I'm going to say if lives is equal to 0, then reload the scene. And right now, if I ran it, what would happen is the asteroid would hit us, and on that frame, it would actually decrease our lives, and then I believe that it would wait for us to detach from the asteroid, and because to get an on-collision exit, and then the next asteroid that hit us, it would decrease the lives again. So this actually does do what we needed. So I hit play here, and let's just go driving through some asteroids. So boom. Now that did not actually reflect anything up here because we don't have any code for that. But if that hits us there, and then we hit it a third time, then it restarts the game. So I mechanically have 3 lives now. I just need to reflect it in my code. And it's actually kind of funny. I thought about doing this with like spawning the guy somewhere else, but this is totally valid. And now this is a place that we're going to do more like what you were talking about, where let's have a separate script on lives GT that uses the static number of lives on player to display itself. So I'm going to add component here, and I'm going to add a new script that I'm just going to call lives. Sure, that's fine. I'll just call it lives. I'm going to open it up. And here, and this is going to be a little bit slow, but it doesn't matter because computers are fast. I'm going to say, okay, well, I need, you know what, I do need that start because I need the text, because lives is a Unity UI. So using Unity engine.ui, and then we're going to here say, okay, text, txt, and then in start, txt equals get component text. So this is kind of what I did before, where I've got a reference now to the text because this is on that text game object. I get a reference to the text component there. And then here in update, all I have to do is say txt.text equals lives colon space plus player ship dot, and look at this. Lives shows up. That. This is one of the massive benefits of having a static public field. So when I made it static, it's shared amongst all the player ships. If there were like 10 player ships, they'd all have just one, lives value. And when I make it public, other things can access it. And they don't have to have a specific player ship. They just reference the player ship class as a whole. And because that whole class shares lives, that's how you can get to lives. And now what this will do is just every frame, it'll update it. And it'll say lives. I talked about using a replace thing, but this is going to be faster, and I want to give you time to do the next thing. So here, we got 3 lives. I hit the thing, and now we have 2 lives. I hit the thing, and then we had 0. So you see what happened there? I hit it, and it spun around, and the back side of it hit me. That to a player would probably feel like cheating, but I'm not going to change that now because, oh, -2. Wow, I did it so fast that now I can live forever. Woo, that's a bad idea. All right, so ways to fix this. Yes? Exactly. Exactly. So one suggestion here is, yeah, let's do a less than. So on the player ship, instead of equals 0, let's do less than or equals 0, right? So that way it'll reset it. But the other thing is, man, I just hit an asteroid. Like, I need some sort of invincibility. And this is something you'll see in the Dungeon Delver script. So let's go ahead and say, when was the last time I hit something? Okay, so then static public float last collision. Actually, yeah, this will be fun. Last collision equals, and we'll just call it like, I don't know, 0 or -1000. Anyway, it's some value that is in the past. And then we're going to say static public float collision delay equals 1. And this is going to say it's going to be 1 second between when we hit something and when we're allowed to hit something again. So here in on collision enter, I'm going to say if time.time is less than last collision plus collision delay, we'll return. And what this will do is when we run into something, we're going to set the last collision time. And if the current time is less than that plus our delay, then we don't need to collide again. I'm going to say else last collision equals time.time. So this will guarantee that we can't collide like twice in less than 1 second. The other thing that you could do here is you could add a script that would like turn the ship red while it was in its like I just hit something state, or make it blink, or any other kind of thing like that. But this will work for what we need. And now this will sort of guarantee that we don't have multiple lives taken off really quickly. So now I hit play, and I go like run into a dude here, and that happened in less than a second, so I'm okay. But if I hit it again, then that knocks my life down by 1, and if I go to 0, then I'm back to 0. It restarts the game. Hey, look what it did not do. Right, it didn't reset lives back to 3, and that's because lives is static, and there's this weirdness in Unity where sometimes that survives a load scene and sometimes it doesn't survive a load scene. But again, we can say, okay, static public int base lives equals 3, and then down here in my on collision enter, when I'm going to do this, I'm just going to say, okay, lives equals base lives. And that'll guarantee that when I do hit things, it'll get reset to 3. Let's just double check it, because I always like rechecking before I do things. Boom, 2, 1, 0, and it goes back to 3. Great. So that took, longer than if I would have done it without a description, but I wanted to talk you through just here's a way to do this. And we're going to try and do this every time. Every time we give you expansions to do that we're asking for, we're going to talk you through how to do them. So now the next thing that we want you to do is going to be, let's look at the calendar. And the calendar always loads really slowly, but it's because somehow Michigan State does not like Bitly, and I don't know why. I need to switch to Google, but I have way less control over that. I like that Bitly allows me to name it MI231 calendar. I guess with more time in my life, I could write my own redirection thing, but I don't want to do that. Wow. This happens for everybody, right?
Yeah. This happens.
On campus, right? Yeah. So in the rest of the world, this doesn't happen. It's just on campus, and it's awful. Okay. It just takes forever to resolve the Bitly for some reason. Is anybody in IT? Can you do something about it? All right. You'll see that the Google Calendar loads just fine. So here we are. This is where we are now. This is next Monday. This is when my son is born. All right. But what I want you to do is I want you to start working on mission demolition. This is why we asked you to bring your books today. Just start working on it. There's a bunch of computers here. You can start working on that. You can, use Unity Collab, or you can send it to yourself, or even better, you can submit it to D2L, because Mac's going to put up a D2L for assignment for mission demolition now. And just start working on it while we're here to answer questions. Raise your hand. Ask us any other questions you have. We've got less than an hour left, which I'm sorry about that, but we do have more than a half hour left, and that's definitely some time to get started on it and ask any questions that you might have. Cool. Anything before we kick into this? Any other questions from people? Yes. Great. Okay, cool. So you're first on the list. If you want help, and Mac and I are both helping someone, then please come up here and just put your name on this board in order, and we will check you off as we help you. So that way we can just get to you in order and not just kind of randomly find the next person who happens to catch our eye when you have questions. So, yeah. And one of these markers probably works